So the reason I want to bring this forward is because this ties into the vision of the bear. And we're trying to break down, we've already sent out the vision, or at least Carrie's working on that, about the vision of the bear, the fish.
The revealing.
The revealing, right. Going up the waterfall to the high waters where perspective is different, and Luna Island and Bridal Veil Falls and Niagara Falls and all that. So I was carrying this over to that file to give more depth about what the waterfall is and what the journey is, because we know that the bear is mother down below that processes in a frequency, and then we move through the river and then up the spiral staircase behind Niagara Falls, which there legitimately is, and then we're standing in the perspective of father because we have or the completed mother through representation of the dream. Or the vision, sorry. And so I was just kind of putting this together, and I was bringing in these verses. And to tie that in, there's a word, it's Strong's 549, and it's amana, and it means a river near Damascus. And I think it's interesting that it's and then ana, ana. But it's the knowing, the ayin nun hey, and this means to testify, and there's an occurrence of that in Songs 4:8, and it means from the summit of Amana, from the summit, and it's Aleph Mem Nun Hey. And so I thought it was very interesting that that was in there. And when you break down Amana, this river, in 549. You can go to 548, and it means faith and support, and it's Aleph Mem Nun Hey.
Right,
something
and that's from Aman.
Right, that's from Aman. Verily, verily, truly, truly, right?
Right,
and
which is the root of when we say Amen.
Right. So we can already establish that word Amana, the river, is already attached to 548, which means a covenant. In its own definition, it says a covenant. So it's this is the revelation of the covenant by its own definition. I want to establish that first. Okay? All right, cool. And then Aman, and then confirm support.
Right, so it's to build up support, foster as a parent or nurse, to render firm or faithful, to trust or believe, to be permanent or quiet, morally be true or certain, and to go to the right hand.
Absolutely. So
well, and it's it's mother, noon.
Right.
With a noon.
Gotcha.
So the activity of life is to build and support you.
And so if we tie it to the river, the whole fish in the river is exactly the definition of the noon.
Right.
The noon is the activity of life as a fish swimming upstream.
Right.
You're going back to source, because the river is the source of why they went out into the sea of humanity, the ocean.
Right, they're going back to
They're
source.
coming back to source. And so we're doing it by going back up the river, the only river that we know, Amana,
right.
and Abna. Right. So we're going back to source as the fish, but we have to raise our tune for the gate upstream.
Right. And so you can even look at the river of Ahava as being the river of love that draws us.
And that's Strong's.
It's like the spiritual river.
Yeah, and that's Strong's 163. If anyone wants to look at that, it's great, because you're encased in Aleph, Hey, Vav, Aleph, and they're completely filled up in the Vav. So you're boxed in with both parents as revelation, standing in the full potential of meekness's intention.
Which is all encapsulated in love.
Ahava.
Ahava.
That's the river of Ahava. Only one occurrence of it.
And so it's the spiritual river that draws us to source.
Yeah. So let's go in and just break this down a little bit, because this is really cool.
That's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
So in this one occurrence,
all dot connecting.
So in this one occurrence, it's in 2 Kings 5:12. They've used, and how it's broken down is not better, Abana, the Abana, and the Farpar, the rivers of Damascus, then all the waters of Israel. Could not I wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. Now, we already know that that's not what's happening here.
Right, that's just the English obfuscation.
So they've used in this that are not, but there's a hey lo. It's funny, it's halo.
Right.
But we know it's the revelation of not, which means really that, and we can break it down this one, hey lament olive. It's really the revelation of the teacher of one.
Exactly.
Right.
So the not is becoming one by getting rid of self.
Right.
Because self says we're separate.
Right. So we are becoming the family of one through the teachings of one, through the revelation of one.
No longer of self.
Right. And until we turn our nature, it's grace for the opportunity to turn, and this is all about turning.
I love the next word, that it's tov.
Tov.
Which means good.
Right. So, and it's choice, right? So we're given choice to wrestle in the basket while in the earth, to know what is and what is not, to produce that nature. What is good is choosing correctly, so you can find the meek standing and build this. This is choice. This is the better choice of how you build correctly. Tov.
Building your temple.
This is all about building your temple. Tov.
Yeah.
And then it's abana, but it's in parentheses of it was written, but that's not what was spoken.
So nobody would see this.
No.
Nobody would see this at all, because in English they wouldn't show that there is a written form and a called out form.
Right.
So
This is huge.
it is big.
So what's written is Aleph, Bet, Nun, Hey. And as we know, Ab is father, but we can also break it down many ways. And again, we're going to skip a stone. We don't need to extract out because this will speak a paragraph right here. But for the spoken part of it, to break it down, just skipping the stones, and we're just let it sink in a little bit for depth, that this is one who is built through the risen process of revelation, or a father that has arisen through the revelation,
Or
a father's revelation.
a stone, a father and son that are as one, that will be revealed.
Absolutely, because this word is. You went a little ahead of me.
Sorry.
But this roots out at Strong 71 roots out as a stone.
Okay, that's so cool. And so, but so what's amazing about that is banah,
Yes,
to build.
yes, you're building the stone temple.
Exactly.
It's why we started yesterday about the revelation of the cornerstone and where the cornerstone comes from in the Hebrew,
Right.
and how it establishes the headstone, because you're building the stone temple.
Right.
Abba,
Exactly.
Father, through Amma, Mother. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool stuff.
So then the called out.
So then the called out, thank you. So then the called out is it's written, don't forget, Aleph, Bet, Nun, Hey, but the called out is Aleph, Mem, Nun, Hey.
so that people can track with that. If we were in the synagogue,
Yeah.
they would read it as the portion that's called out, which would be Amna.
Right.
They wouldn't read Abna.
You would have never heard Father
no
in
way.
that. The only way you would know, because they would have known, because they were reared in the way of knowing what mother and father's components do. So they would have probably, most likely, the scholarly ones would have had reference to knowing that, oh, you're speaking of the portion that still needs to produce the measure of intention.
Right.
So that's how I would recognize that. Like, oh,
If they had the eyes to see.
if they had the eyes to see.
Yep.
But so Aleph Mem is mother, and it's the Nun Hey again. So they're saying that mother will raise your nature through the revelation as well.
Through the spiritual path.
But this has been broken into pieces for a reason, and I don't mean broken as negating contractual language. I mean it as a separation for the purpose of comprehension. That's the right breaking for definition. So, very interesting, right? So now they're speaking of a definition that actually says mother and father. This now justifies the components of mother and father, that
Exactly.
they both hold a piece, and both pieces have intention to become one. Because really, in this, they're saying they're one. They're saying they're
Right.
one, but they've had to pull out of themselves one for the purpose of expression, for back to the intention of one.
It's interesting, though, that also in Amna,
Yeah,
just connecting with what you're saying, Mem Nun
yeah,
is man, which is manna.
right,
So whenever you see manna in Scripture, when you look at the Hebrew word, it's spelled, it's Mem Nun,
right,
right?
yep,
So this is the manna that we start with.
yep,
It's mother's.
right, absolutely. And so mother teaches us how to process this. So, and this is, we're not going to go down to the basis of this, but let's just take it. This is a little bit more solidified revelation here that we are where we are. But so now mother is, and so now we have this are not better father and mother, Abana and Amana, and the Farpar, the rivers, and the Farpar is Vav Peresh, and it's a strong pay in the second Peresh, and the Vav on the prefix is added, which is establishing piercing, and which is establishing humility, and is establishing
connecting to mother.
Right. So this is a conjunctor that's saying only humility will connect to the mouth. If you want to know mother, you have to know that the piercing will produce the measure of meekness, so you can speak with the mouth the revelation of the first mountain.
Right.
And then we go to the next. It's still in this word, Peresh, but it's a strong pay. So now this is the double measure of the pay, connecting the fuller measure of the reshes. And it's interesting because when you go into the root of this word, 6554, let's go down. It roots out at 6565, and it's parar, and it means to defeat, but it means to break up. And this is how I can tell that. But it doesn't. Again, the highest perspective of frequency of Father's language, divide and break up is different than breaking up for the sake of severing. This isn't a severing language other than the frequency of severing for, again, to establish the pieces that we go between. And so we're going between mother and father, and then when we learn mother's Peresh, which is where we get Pharaoh from, which we get the language of headship from, headstone language, we then are now into the Peresh. The strong mouth speaks as the established mother, now speaking as the established father.
And Peresh is also is attached to fruit.
Absolutely. This is actually, and this is where we're going with this is actually the double fruitfulness.
Ephraim.
The
doubly fruitful ones right here.
Right. So
through Abna and Amna, par.
So we can actually see that so let's go back a little bit. Abana, it's the river in Damascus. The original word has only one occurrence of it, and it's in this verse, 2 Kings 5:12. So there's only one occurrence of this, and it's never spoken.
Right.
That's important.
Right.
So it's spoken as mother because father hasn't come yet. So only one occurrence of it, and it's not spoken, and it means stony, and it ties right to Eben. Okay? Let's just connect that.
The stones who will build.
The stones who are built, or the stones who have, that are built. Right?
That will be revealed.
That will be revealed.
As family.
Absolutely. And now it's interesting too that when you go to Amana, because you can't blow by this too fast, so let's just back it up a bit that before we go into the Peresh, that Amana means a river near Damascus, also a region from which it flows. The same as Amana, a mountain near Damascus. And that's, again, Strong's 549. Like, really interesting, right? And so we have Ana, Ana, and we know that 6030 in Strong's is to testify, right, as a witness.
Right.
And then to reiterate that this, to really confirm the mountain of 549, Amana. It's in Songs 4:8, and it means from the summit of Amana, and then again from the summit. Now there's a lot hidden in that. That's not where we're going.
But we have already talked about reaching the summit of mother, so that the inverted pyramid can touch us, which is that of father.
And what is it? Because this is all based off of, we just shared it already, Amana, faith and support, 548.
Right.
So 549 means the river and the mountain, and then 548 means faith and support. So this is the mountain of faith. You become, mother teaches...
That's right, because you can't do anything without faith.
Mother teaches you to become the faith man. She
Right.
raises you up the noon, walking the wave of tension as the fish would return from the sea of humanity back to source for the purpose of turning to find likeness. I've calibrated it and I found the river again, and I'm coming now back to source.
So in other words, this is the description of faith. So, I mean, really, because people ask about faith all the time, well, what is it? Well, I have faith. Well, now we're describing what faith is.
Yeah,
That's big.
that's huge. This is huge.
That's big.
Mother is calling, and I saw this yesterday, that mothers is calling with the humble voice, and only humility can answer.
Absolutely.
To return back, you have to resonate to Mother Bear, who is humility. And only those that resonate to her call can return.
Because she's the gatekeeper.
Because she's the gatekeeper. Humility is the gatekeeper.
Yep. Because that's the only way you can approach Father. Protocols to approach.
And then Father is the higher dimensional construct of meekness that is the next level. But so this is really big. So as we said before, to go the right hand like this, if we were to draw a triangle and to have an arrow along the bottom, this would be the returning river that's flowing back, and then we're going up the waterfall. So we're now going up the right hand side of the pyramid to establish the top, and then we flow back down the left hand side. That is proper direction. That's the flow.
Yep.
Right hand establishes the top is now established, and then the left hand, or the top, comes down the left hand to show others how to go in humility, to ascend back to intention, back to source, to then come back down. This is by
meekness.
What I'm actually speaking is, this is Yara Shalom.
Exactly.
They flow down as water because they went the way of water, up the mountain, the waterfall of water, to become the likeness, the similitude of, and therefore out of their mouth flows the river of peace, Ahava.
Right. And this is where Paul mentions Le Orshalim, because at that point, when the two mountains touch, and you become 0 point, you've just activated your light body.
Absolutely.
So you come as the teachers of light that have been completed.
Right. So really big step. Just on that, that's a lot of revelation in there that we haven't really even gone into the scriptures to extract out, other than what I have, but it's a little too much. It goes too broad, too wide width, and then too high in height and depth. And I have 100 pages, and we've spent many years doing this, and it's like I'm just, again, drips and drops. So I'm just going to focus on this, that the first occurrence of this is in 2 Kings 5:12, just to bring it back around again. And so these are the better waters of Father that were never spoken, only written, but we have to go through Mother. So if we're not in Mother, then how in the heck are you going to get Father?
Yeah.
Because Mother calls in the voice of humility, and only humility can answer.
Yeah.
Because Father is established in meekness.
Yes.
So these two rivers out of Damascus that are completed as the Mem Kof Lamed, these are the completed Mikols.
But you skipped over something.
I did?
Yeah, I want to talk about Nahar. That's big.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Because Nahar, it's a river, but it means also to sparkle and glisten.
Yes. Yeah, but again, like I have a whole, okay, so let's do that. Let me go here. We're gonna open this up a little bit. Okay, you want to go there? Let's go there.
Well, if we are the light of the world, we have to know how to become the light of the world.
Right.
Right? And this is Nahar, which means to sparkle and glisten, which is contained within the root or the word menorah.
Yes. This is going to be this is going to be a big teaching.
It's okay. If we need to split it in two. But so Nahar, it's Nun Har, the spiritual mountain.
Yes.
It's because Nun, it's elevated, so it's the spiritual path in the activity of life that reveals what is necessary to raise us up.
Yes.
The spiritual mountain.
So
that we can be connected and filled up, connected to Father, and now having a sine wave frequency change. Because we went through Mother. Anyway, that's a big word.
Okay. But I'm going to break it down because I have it already documented in here, so I'm going to step through it. So, but I want to start it off with this because it makes sense that we present it in a way that we can assist other people. So how, again, do you reach to restore if there's ignorance to neglect? Answer, you must remember. You must remember to return back to Mother's way. And this is actually, I can say that this is actually the way of Ephraim. Because, so, As a fish would naturally swim upstream to spawn, the cyclical activity of life would draw you to the mother bear who stands in the middle of the river guarding as the gate. This is the gate of intention. I'm reading this off my notes off this. So of why the true lesser reality is here. What we're to do, we're to come out of it to find our way back home. This is to answer the call to get the door out of this. To come out through the revelation of what is and what is not. Upon inspection, she allows those who resonate to her frequency to pass, therefore becoming as she is. The first piece, the 100-fold. This is the place of coming out of her. Moshe, Mashiach. You're weaving your own garments, as Jesse and I were talking. We are on the place of a mothership looking for the peace of fathership, and upon finding him, we have fulfilled the purpose of becoming the wholehearted being, the 1,000-fold anointing. Those who no longer forget, as they have found the pieces that produce the remembering of the firstborn blessing, the who, the Michaels, as they have become. So, now this is setting up for Ephraim is where we're going. This is now the double fruitful of the Aleph, Pei, Resh, Yod, Mem, which is how you spell Ephraim.
Right.
Because we're going to bring in the Pei, Resh. Okay. And Ephraim, we know, roots down at strong 666. A temporary covering.
Yep.
A bandage.
Yep.
And it's right in its own definition.
Because the bandage is covering the wound, and the wound is the forgetting.
All of Pei, Resh.
Yeah.
The one covering, it's the one language.
Yep.
That is of a top, but it's a temporary covering that
Right.
takes you out to the 999. Because it was already established that there is a greater intention of the Pei, Resh,
Resh.
Right. So really we can then totally debone the beast that's all threatening, if we can render it from a higher perspective, to say it is simply a frequency and a process of becoming. We already know, like you've well established in your teachings, the concept of what it really is simply as a frequency, an adjutant that would produce the greater version.
Right, which then takes us to Kayutha.
Right.
The living. The
Right.
living that came through the beast,
Right.
ego, right?
Right.
That are pierced within, that have the Father's signature frequency and are as of one.
Absolutely.
Having the 1,000-fold measure.
So we're still talking about the river here. We're just we're filling up the river.
Yeah.
We're filling up our water basin, because this is all about, when you actually look at river, it really actually roots down to, well, we'll bring it up in a minute.
But it's the river of becoming.
But it also means a valley. It
Yeah.
means a basin of where you stand between, that is to be filled up with the
water.
mimi, with the water,
Yeah.
right? Yod Mem. If you can't fill up the basin with a vision, you'll never make it upstream.
Right.
It's going to be dry and bare. Because the revelation of what I'm seeing is, unless you're in the metaphorical wilderness, this is where, again, it's an oxymoron, because this is where the flowers bloom, in the dry spot, because they filled up the basin with water.
Right.
Okay, which is another metaphorical language for blood.
Right.
Crossover.
Right.
Meta. Okay. So Ephraim, we know that it is the covenantal language, because it's Ephraim is the Aleph, Pei, Resh, Tav. So we already have one's covenant through the covenantal language of the mouth that would speak of the way of the leader of the standing sine wave, or that is what the signet or the seal or the sign of.
The covenant.
The covenant, that's the Tav.
Yep.
And then we know that roots out at para, to be fruitful, which is Pei, Resh, He. So speaking the mouth of the leader or the teacher is the revelation of becoming the fruitful.
Right.
It's a.
So in other words, a lot of people will say, like, the lesser version is that you're demonstrating the fruits of the Spirit. Right? But the higher version is, let me bring you the revelation of what the fruits of the Spirit are.
Right.
Through a higher narrative, a higher perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. You're bringing the portion, the one portion, and the second portion, and how can you comprehend the greater portion if you don't even comprehend the lesser portion?
Exactly.
How can you come out of something if you don't even know you're in something? It's that same language.
Because Mother would teach the outward manifestation so that you can rightly relate to people. Father's overlay comes on top, that deals with the inward portion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hence why you're doubly fruitful.
Right. Father's all about taking it inwardly and speaking it as these are all attributes of you becoming I am.
Yep.
And that is what it is. I don't apologize for saying I am. It's just like, oh my goodness, when you see what we are to become, you realize anything less than a summation of I am is really diminishing the totality of who we are as a priestly people.
Because we forgot.
Right, but all we can do is see the perspective of where we are in our given moment to associate a measure of I am,
Right.
because that is progressional.
Right.
Okay. So the fish return, and I can say that actually the fish we can associate to the temple of Anat, because this is actually this is the house of replies.
Yeah.
That mother has called out, and who replies? The fish. The ones that swim are hearing because they see through the vision, and therefore they become the reply, and they've answered in humility and said, I want to resonate to that. May I swim back up and enter that gate? And she'll say, come, because you're resonating to my frequency. I will inspect you to see if you can pass my gate.
Right. And so you can connect Shema to that.
Absolutely.
The hear and do, hearing intelligently, the fire and the water that gives you the ability to see.
Absolutely. And so we can even connect that
Shem
to
of the name that sees.
and we can connect that to the laver, because it's sustained vernacular. As the fish return, it's the same process as from altar to laver in the wilderness journey of the tabernacle.
Fire in the water.
Fire in the water. So
Right.
you're burning up what is necessary so you can see the reflection in the water.
Right.
Before you enter into the inner courts. Before
Right.
you enter into the inner courts.
Right.
Okay, very
Totally
cool.
comprehend.
All right, awesome. Going somewhere. So the temple of Anat are the reply. They're the ones that have gone out. Now they're returning as a fish would return upstream. And we know that the temple of Anat is part of Anat again. You've now begun to speak, because that's what Anat means.
Right.
As
to give a reply.
a testimony.
Right.
So now you're a testimony and a witness.
Right.
Right? Because you're comprehending the first part, because mother and father are the witnesses. We become a witness and a testimony only through the frequency of a witness and a testimony. That's the summation of total.
Right.
So
Totally agree. Which then shows that's the Mikol.
Yep.
I mean, we skipped over Damascus, but
Yep. But we're not.
We're skipping?
We're still filling in the river.
okay.
We're still filling in the river.
Okay, got it.
That's what we're again. Because
Okay.
so we're talking about the fish returning as the temple of Anat, about the fish house of replies. We can now take that to Strong's 8666, because the beastly nature of what has to produce through Manasseh, the covering, the lesser covering 666, the new beginnings 8 will produce or will be released through the return. Teshuvah.
Right, because then that's the process in our returning where we will then begin to remember.
So Strong's 8.
Because the closer we get to source, right?
Yeah.
And the more that we increase our vibrational level, the more that we get to pierce through the veil. And the veil is the veil of forgetting.
Absolutely. This is the answer to the question. The Temple of Anat is actually stating that you are the answer to your question.
Right, so then this validates why the blessing couldn't have been given to Manasseh.
Right.
Because his name means to forget.
To forget. So the answer is remember. So
Remember, so
right.
you can be doubly fruitful.
So the answer to the question is answer.
Answer the call.
Answer the call. And so by doing that, again, only humility can respond to that frequency of what's calling it.
Exactly.